Hey yo, what's up? My name is Nick, and I'm going to be your other instructor for this class. So glad you got to meet Jenna and hear about her story a little bit. It's now my turn to tell you a little bit about myself. The biggest thing is my name is Nick. My birth name is Nick. I use it for all legal stuff. But every year from May 1st to September 1st, I go by Rick. So if you see me on the internet as Nick or Rick and you're like, what the freak? Like, is there two guys? Like, no, it's all me, but just my summer name is Rick. It's just a fun thing I decided to do like 5 years ago. I got the idea from my dad. He did it one summer in college. He went by Eddie instead of his real name, and he still has friends that call him Eddie to this day. But yes, I go by Rick during the summer, Nick the rest of the year. So if you're wondering about that, that's probably one of the first things you should know about me. Okay, if you still think I'm not too crazy to take the rest of the class, let me tell you about myself. I grew up in Wilsonville, Oregon, and I really like to play basketball. It's probably my favorite sport to both play and watch. Rode the bench all through high school, so didn't get to play a lot as far as the school team, but I love to play pickup ball. So if you like to play basketball as too, let's hook up sometime and play. Other stuff I like to do, I love tech stuff. So all growing up, I loved video games, computers. Always tried to get into programming, and I'll talk about that, but never really could figure it quite out. I went to school at BYU in Utah. I studied information systems, which I describe to people as if computer science and business had a baby together, it would be information systems. So anyways, there's a little bit of background about me, just so you know me. I love to have a good time. I like to try and be fun. Hopefully you can make it through my corny jokes. And I love to dance, if you haven't noticed from some of my promo videos. So I'd like to maybe just dive into how I got into programming and specifically iPhone programming. So like I said, growing up, I always wanted to get into programming. It started with games. Just playing computer games like Age of Empires, Command and Conquer. I just always wanted to figure out, did you guys ever play the Chex game that came in the cereal box? Like, that thing was dope. I always thought it'd be cool to make video games. So I remember buying or checking out library books on like programming, even game programming, and it just never seemed to work for me. Like, there was all sorts of language in there that just didn't quite click, and especially when I was younger, like I could barely finish like a fun book like Harry Potter. Like, no way I was making it through this technical thing. So all growing up through high school, never did programming. After high school, I took like a community college programming class that was with like Visual Basic, and it's like, okay, this is how you do an if statement, and this is how you add numbers. And which for me, like, that was cool. I was like, oh dang, like when you click this button, it adds these two things. Let's go. But you couldn't really do much with that. So fast forward to college, I take an intro to programming class, and it was the funnest class I took, but I took forever in that class. All the assignments, everything, I swear I took like 3 times longer than everyone else. So totally fascinating class, loved it, but I just thought, man, if I keep doing this major in these classes, like, I am going to get crushed. Which, in retrospect, I think I could have made it. Programming is the sharp, learning curve, and if you can make it through that first part, you really start to gain some momentum under your feet. But anyways, all that's to say, I had some intros to programming, but nothing really concrete. So then in 2008, I leave for a 2-year Mormon mission in Japan. If you don't know anything about those kind of missions, you're a little bit shut off from technology. So during this time, the iPhone was blowing up and apps became a really big thing. So I'm kind of out in isolation, but then I come back, and as a welcome home gift, my dad was really nice, and he bought me a brand new iPhone 4. The stinking phone had come out just the day before, and I was blown away. I was like, you can record HD video, like, oh my gosh, and you can edit it on the phone. But the whole idea of apps was like crazy. I specifically remember the first time I made the mistake of bringing my phone with me into the bathroom. It's like, I didn't have a magazine. I'll bring my phone in there. And it was like 45 minutes later, once my legs fell asleep and I couldn't even walk out because I was just mesmerized by all the apps. Like, you go to the app store, download one, play with it 10 minutes, blows your mind. You're like, I want another one. So you go download another one, find a game. Like, I remember playing Yahtzee with my aunt, and she had like some Yahtzee companion app that looked up all these different words, and I'm just, or no, not Yahtzee, Boggle, and I was just like, holy crap! Like these apps are amazing. So I have this new phone. Apps are like the coolest thing to me, and I think I want to make my own app. And I even knew what app I wanted to make. I'd been mini golfing with some family, and I just thought, oh, if I could make the scorecard on the phone, I don't have to use the dumb paper and pencil, it'll be all digital, add up the score for us. You don't have to worry about Matt doing his shoddy math and giving himself a better score. Like, perfect. So I was all set out that I wanted to make this mini golf scorecard. So I went out and I was watching stuff online, like iTunes U had a free class. I was checking out books from the library. I was watching YouTube videos, but like, holy cow, it was like my same experience when I was younger. Like everything I took had this like kind of premise that if you're watching this, you must have grown up programming and you know exactly what a class is and what a Boolean is. And like, I'm just like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, and it was just all so complicated and boring, and it just, I hated it. I really wanted to make this app, but I could just never find the right way to get to it. So I started that back in like 2010, and it wasn't until like 2.5 years later that I really got into it and just said, look, I'm going to meet with people who make apps. I'm going to try and get internships, like unpaid internships, just be around people who are making apps and just ask as many questions as I can until I can get there. So I did that, and I slowly started to learn. And like I was saying, programming, the learning curve is like very steep. But once you like kind of get the gist of it, the basics, like you take off. Because once you have one level, like a certain level of understanding, you can understand all those great learning materials. Like the great thing about the internet is there's so much freaking info out there. And like people are so open about, you know, when they learn something, they share it online on their own blog or YouTube videos, and it's great. But at least I found with programming, you've got to get to a certain point before that stuff even makes sense to you. Like Apple documentation, I mean, it took me like probably 6 months to a year of like doing the programming to where I could start to feel comfortable and be like, yeah, I read this and this makes sense. So anyways, once I had met with people who were making apps, I started to like hit a stride. And the very first app I had in the App Store, I made it with my friend. It was an app on weightlifting videos. So all we did was we just took a bunch of videos from YouTube on weightlifting, and we kind of organized them in this app and said, this is the best one if you want to get strong biceps, and you know, this is the good one if you want to get big pecs or legs, like whatever. We just broke it all down. And the first time I submitted to Apple, they rejected it. It was like this big, nice, long sentence, but essentially said, your app is too ugly. I was like, oh, freak. So then I go ask my designer friend for help. He helps me. We go to submit to Apple again. They say, oh, your app doesn't have enough functionality. It's like, come on, like this is the coolest thing I've ever done. Like, accept it. And eventually the third time it got through, and man, just from there, took off. I started doing like, you know, private freelance work, working for companies to help them make apps. I'd get like a summer internship making apps. I did one for a startup, one for a more established company, and just I was making my own apps just kind of for fun, and it was excellent. So that's how I got into making apps. Let me tell you how I got into teaching. It was back in 2014 when Apple announced Swift. I remember I was watching WWDC, which is Apple's like developer conference where they announce new stuff, usually new operating system versions, right? Like at that time it was iOS 8, and then they announced Swift, like a new language, and like languages don't come out every day. Like they've been using this old language, Objective-C, for like the past like 15 years or something. So this was a shock to like everyone, me included. I was just like, oh my gosh. And after I'd kind of gotten over how cool it was, I just thought about it for a second, and it's like, dang, like I bet I could make a class teaching people how to make apps using this new language, Swift, and I know how many, you know, sucky material was out there that just was so hard to understand and everything. Like, I can do better than that. I know what it feels like to be so confused, and I can talk to people, and I bet I could make a pretty good class. So I went out and I went nuts. The very first, like, I made a class on just Swift, not necessarily app programming, but just Swift. And I recorded 50 videos in 4 days, like barely even slept during this time or ate. It was just like video, 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 video. So that's how I got into teaching. And ever since I've been teaching, I've loved it. I mean, honestly, I've been teaching only for a little over a year, but I couldn't be happier. Like, I just love to see when, students figure something out and they're starting to catch stride. And I love seeing students' apps on the App Store. So please send me a link when you have your app in the App Store. I'd love to check it out and download it. Even right here on my phone, I'll show you. I have a folder called Student Apps, and the thing is just chock full of all these apps, and it's just, oh, it's great. I don't even have them all on here. This is probably half of them, but like, I need to upgrade my phone. I need more memory. Anyways, yes, that's how I got into teaching, and that's a little bit about me. So we're going to continue forward and talk about more about the goals of this class. You've heard enough about me. Let's get to the actual like programming stuff. But I just want you to know that I really appreciate you signing up for this class. I'd love to help you. Please, if you ever have a question, post it on Udemy. We have an awesome community of students that love to help each other. So students are going to be helping you. I dive into the questions as much as I can to answer stuff. But please never be afraid to ask questions. I come from the dumbest of dumb, and sometimes you don't even know the right question to ask, and never be like embarrassed that you're asking it here, because this is just like shame-free zone. All right. Yeah. Other places you might worry about, like YouTube comments, people are going to light you up like, you're an idiot, get out of here. But like, no, here you got a question, you post it, either myself or the community here, we're going to help you out and we're going to get you there. So, all right, enough with me. We're going to skip it back to Jenna, and she's going to talk more about the class.